You're probably in the wrong place, sweetheart. Our dresses start at 80,000. That's what the boutique manager sneered at a woman in beige linen. What no one knew, not the staff, not the influencers, not even the billionaire guests, was that she wasn't there to impress them. She was there to change everything. This is the story of a woman mocked for her simplicity, who returned as the most powerful bride they had ever seen. Now, before we dive deeper, please subscribe to our channel. We share powerful, meaningful stories like this every day. And drop a comment below to let us know where you're watching from. Thank you so much, and now, let's get back to the story. You're probably in the wrong place, sweetheart. Our gowns start at 80,000. Bridal didn't even look up from the sleek, leather-bound appointment ledger as she spoke, her voice smooth with practiced cruelty. Her manicured nail hovered over the golden page as though the name she'd just been given, Elena James, was too insignificant to stain its surface. Elena stood just inside the gleaming glass doors of Atelier Valentina, the most elite bridal atelier in Los Angeles. Her canvas sandals made no sound on the marble floor, but her presence seemed to offend everyone in the room. The chandeliers above sparkled like frozen rain, catching the morning sun through the tall Madison windows, but none of their light touched her. Dressed in simple beige culottes and a loose cotton blouse, her dark curls tied back into a low knot, Elena looked more like someone browsing flea markets than someone preparing to marry into one of the world's most powerful families. And that's exactly how they wanted her to feel. Behind Bridal stood Jenna, Harper, and Cleo, three sleek silhouettes in matching black cocktail dresses, their lips painted with precision, their eyes sharpened like daggers. They didn't say a word, but their expressions screamed of homeward. "What is she doing here?" "I have an appointment," Elena replied calmly, lifting her phone from the pocket of her tote bag and holding it out. Elena James, 11 o'clock. Custom fitting. Bridal glanced at the screen, eyes lingering on the boutique's own logo displayed at the top of the confirmation email. But instead of offering an apology or even basic acknowledgement, her lips curled. "That's adorable," she said sweetly, her tone acid behind the sugar. "But you must understand, we're a private atelier. Our clients are, let's just say, not typically this." Cleo giggled. "Did she steal someone's invite?" "Probably a TikTok stunt," Jenna chimed in, "trying to go viral by pretending to be famous." Behind them, Harper said nothing. Her arms were crossed, but her gaze flicked to Elena's face, studying her, seeing something the others didn't, or didn't want to. "I placed the order 6 months ago," Elena said, her voice as smooth and unshaken as satin. "Custom gown. Ivory silk, diamond embroidery, design L714. "Sweetheart," Bridal's voice oozed pity. "We don't rent, we don't do walk-ins, and we certainly don't waste our time with fakes." "I'm not a fake," Elena replied simply. But the laughter from Cleo's corner grew louder. She had already pulled out her phone and was live-streaming the scene with a caption that read, "Stranger in clearance clothes crashes elite bridal fitting. Wait for the twist." Viewers flooded in. Elena remained still. Not a twitch in her brow, not a tremble in her voice. "I'd like to speak to the manager," she said politely. Bridal threw her head back and laughed, this time full-bodied and theatrical. "Darling, I am the manager, and you are not on our client list." She motioned to Jenna, who stepped forward with a thin smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Let's not make a scene," she said. "This boutique has standards. Surely you understand." Elena didn't move. Behind her, a woman in a white fur, stole, and glittering diamonds clacked forward on towering heels. Her voice sliced through the room like a whip. "Who let this riffraff in?" All heads turned. It was Sonia Mehta, the Silicon Valley magnate turned fashion darling. Her family owned half the venture capital real estate in Malibu, and her influence could sink a brand with a single tweet. She moved toward Elena with deliberate disdain, her golden bangles jingling like warning bells. "This is an insult to couture," she snapped, flicking the sleeve of Elena's blouse with the back of a manicured finger. Security should have removed her already. Laughter rang out, giddy, vicious, triumphant. Elena's fingers clutched her tote just a bit tighter. Still, her posture didn't change. She didn't lash out, didn't cry, didn't beg. "I'd like to speak to Ms. Valentina directly," she said, her voice low but unwavering. Harper blinked. Interesting, she thought, but said nothing. The mob closed in, Cleo's live stream was now at 2,000 viewers. Comments flew in. She thinks this is a movie. Get her out of there. When you RSVP but forget the dress code. Beige is the new broke. The cruelest meme would come later, but Elena had already become the internet's newest spectacle. Bridal waved her hand with the grace of a queen dismissing a servant. Try the department store down the block, she said. And with that, Jenna and Cleo guided her, not roughly, but with the firm choreography of practiced exclusion, toward the door. Sonia's voice rang out one last time. You're in the wrong world, darling. That dress you're dreaming of, it'll never belong to someone like you. The door clicked shut behind her and the streets of Los Angeles swallowed her whole. But inside her, something sparked. Outside, the morning was still fresh. A light breeze caught the edge of her blouse, and the scent of jasmine floated from a nearby vendor. Elena walked quietly down the avenue, blending into the crowd like any other woman running errands. She didn't touch her phone, didn't cry. She simply walked, one foot after the other, like someone following a path only she could see. Behind her, Atelier Valentina buzzed with self-congratulation. Cleo's stream was going viral. Bridal was already sending clips to her PR friends. Not one of them asked themselves why the name Elena James felt vaguely familiar. Not one of them paused to consider that their careless cruelty was being documented on a much larger stage. And not one of them, not even Sonia Mehta, realized they had just mocked the woman who would, in less than a week, own everything they stood on. Y'all, she really thought she could just walk in there like she owned the place. Cleo's voice dripped with mockery as her latest stream looped once again, this time as a clipped, edited TikTok reel with booming text overlay. Beige pants girl tries to buy $80K dress. Within hours, the footage had exploded across platforms. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, everywhere. Her image, frozen in mid-turn near the velvet curtains of Atelier Valentina, became the meme of the day. The phrase, when you RSVP but forget the glow-up, trended within 3 hours. Vanity Fair reposted it with a savage breakdown. Fashion faux pas or fame seeker, the nobody who crashed Valentina. The Daily Mail was even crueler. Mystery woman in beige humiliated at elite boutique? Who does she think she is? Even fashion bloggers jumped on board. One wrote, you don't wear linen culottes into a sacred space like Atelier Valentina. That's fashion blasphemy. And no one, not one outlet, not one influencer, not one laughing commenter, stopped to ask who she actually was. Not a single person Googled her name. Not that they would have found anything. Elena James had been meticulously invisible for years. But in boardrooms and cloud servers across the country, something else entirely was happening. At the Lumina headquarters in downtown LA, a stark high-rise with matte black windows and a penthouse office lined with live orchids, a woman named Elena sat calmly in a minimalist chair, watching the chaos she'd just endured spiral into internet wildfire. Her assistant, Lucia, hovered near the glass wall, phone in hand, trembling slightly. They're calling you? Beige girl. She said softly, unsure whether to be angry or amused. Elena didn't flinch. Let them. Lucia hesitated. Would you like me to call our media contacts, issue a correction, or leak something to the press? No. Elena turned toward the city skyline. The sun was slipping behind the towers, golden light bending across the clouds like silk. We're not changing the story. Not yet. Behind her, the monitors flickered with news headlines. Her stock, Lumina Inc., continued to rise. Her identity remained sealed, because she hadn't built Lumina on exposure. She had built it on silence. On work done at 2 a.m. in a tiny Brooklyn studio with cracked windows and borrowed Wi-Fi. On sketches she'd poured her heartbreak into. On textile choices no one understood until the runway lights hit them. On the very principle that a woman shouldn't need to prove her worth just to be seen. 3 days later, the world turned again. A series of ivory invitations embossed in silver foil arrived in the hands of every staff member at Atelier Valentina and the influencers who had shared Cleo's viral clip. No return address, no explanation, just a simple line. You are invited to the private wedding of Damien Cross, Tuscany, Chateau della Stella. Strictly confidential. Bridal, Jenna, Cleo, and Harper gathered in the boutique's back lounge with flushed cheeks and shaking hands. Damien Cross? The Damien Cross? Cleo gasped. The media magnate? His empire's worth $40 billion, Jenna whispered. He owns everything. News, streaming, fashion magazines. Why us? Brielle muttered. Why would he invite us? Cleo's eyes glittered. He must have seen the stream. Maybe he liked it. Harper stayed quiet. A bad feeling brewed in her gut, but she couldn't explain it. Elena James had said something that lingered in her memory. You're making a mistake. And now, an invitation from one of the world's most powerful men appeared in her mailbox days later? Could be a coincidence, Harper murmured. Brielle laughed, waving it off. It's not. We're going viral. That's clout, baby. Across town, the influencers who had mocked Elena the loudest preened in designer showrooms. Aria Bloom, fashion vlogger with 1 million followers, twirled in a lavender silk gown, recording herself in the mirror. This is going to be the wedding of the decade, she gushed. And trust, I will own every frame. Luca Voss, dripping in gold accessories and self-importance, filmed a GRWM titled, How to Look Billionaire Ready Without Actually Being One. They all believed the same lie. They were being rewarded. No one questioned the timing. No one wondered how Damien Cross even had their names. Meanwhile, Elena James packed a single linen dress into a leather trunk. No designer label, no entourage. She was not returning for revenge. She was returning to reclaim something that had always been hers. When the private jets landed on a rolling green hill in Tuscany, even the sky seemed to hold its breath. The Château delle Stelle towered like a dream, spires carved from white stone, gardens blooming with roses, a marble courtyard wrapped around a fountain shaped like a phoenix. Everything gleamed. The elite disembarked like royalty. Cleo stepped down the stairs of her jet in a crimson gown, already live streaming. Her following had doubled since the beige girl incident. This is my moment, she whispered to Jenna, who wore emerald satin and sunglasses too big for her face. Brielle, draped in sapphire velvet, clutched her invitation like it was a passport to heaven. And Harper stepped off last. Her black lace dress whispered with each movement. Her hands trembled, but she ignored them. Inside the shadow gates, photographers buzzed like bees. Fashion editors laughed like they owned the stars. Stylists gossiped near the champagne bar. Everyone believed they were important. Everyone assumed they belonged, until a ripple ran through the crowd. Someone gasped, heads turned toward the gate, and silence followed like a ghost. Because walking slowly through the sunlit arch, her feet dusted with petals, her beige linen dress fluttering in the breeze, came the woman they had once kicked out without mercy, Elena James. No glam squad, no jewelry, no entourage. Just a calm expression and quiet steps that made the marble beneath her tremble. Cleo dropped her champagne flute. Jenna gasped audibly. Brielle's smile froze. Is that? Aria Bloom whispered. The beige pants girl? She's crashing again, Luca Voss muttered, already grabbing his phone. Elena kept walking, her hazel eyes gliding over the crowd without fear. She declined a waiter's champagne with a simple nod. Her grace was unnerving, like she didn't notice the knives in their hands, or worse, like she did and wasn't afraid of them. Whispers sharpened into jeers. She has no shame. She's back? Someone get security before she ruins the ceremony. She's a joke. But Harper didn't move. Because while everyone else saw the linen and the flats, Harper was watching the fire behind Elena's eyes. And she knew. This wasn't shame. This was someone walking toward a battlefield already won. She's crashing again, and she still didn't bother to dress. Aria Bloom's voice carried like a blade across the marble courtyard, wrapped in satin and self-righteousness. Her lavender gown shimmered, but her words were laced with venom. Phones were already rising, fingers tapping, lenses zooming. Cleo's live stream was active again. Viewers jumped from 20,000 to 50,000 in under a minute. Round 2, y'all, Cleo whispered gleefully. Beige girl's back, and she's crashing a billionaire wedding this time. Luca Voss adjusted his cufflinks, grinning for the camera. This is embarrassing, he said loudly. Imagine showing up to a cross wedding looking like she got lost on the way to the farmer's market. Elena James stood still. No designer gown, no jewels, no stylist to whisper how to pose. She looked like serenity wrapped in linen, her dress brushing just past her knees, the hem soft and scuffed from the stone path. The wind carried a strand of her dark hair across her cheek, but she didn't lift a hand to move it. Every insult hurled at her, every whisper, every mocking laugh, every stifled giggle from behind a champagne glass, she absorbed like glass absorbs light. Without breaking, without reflecting. Brielle stormed toward her with practiced confidence, hips swaying like a pendulum of power. "This is a private event," she snapped. "And you don't belong here." Jenna followed at her heels, eyes flashing. "Don't humiliate yourself again, miss, whoever you are." Arya's laugh cracked the air like a whip. "Oh, she's already doing that, honey." The crowd encircled Elena like wolves, hungry, gleeful, ruthless. "I'm invited," Elena said softly, calmly. "Check the list." Brielle scoffed so hard it was almost theatrical. "There's no way. Your name's not on any list that matters." She waved toward the security team. "Get her out of here." A man named Hugo, broad, buzzed hair, suit like armor, stepped forward. His hand hovered near Elena's arm. "Ma'am, I'm gonna have to escort you off the premises," he said in a flat, neutral tone. Still, she didn't flinch. "Ask for Damien," she said. "He'll clear this up." And just like that, the air changed. For a heartbeat, the courtyard pulsed in silence. Then Brielle laughed, high and cruel. "Damien Cross? You're dreaming, sweetheart." But Hugo hesitated. Elena didn't plead. She didn't defend. She just stood there, eyes steady, voice calm, like she wasn't just surrounded by venom, but above it. The crowd, sensing resistance, surged again. Tessa, an ambitious intern in a cocktail dress far too loud for the event, raised her voice. "She's probably here to steal a gown," she shouted, pointing at Elena's plain tote bag like it was a weapon. The young interns hooted in delight, encouraged by her boldness. Someone, no one saw who, flung a half-eaten macaron. It struck Elena's hem, pink crumbs crumbling against the beige fabric. "Take that back to Brooklyn," another voice yelled. Laughter erupted. Cleo zoomed in gleefully on her live stream. 80,000 viewers now. The comments were savage. "Trash doesn't belong in castles. Make her cry. She thinks she's the main character." Sonia Mehta stepped from the sidelines, her golden gown catching the sun like fire. "She's scamming us all," she sneered, her bangles jangling. "Thinks if she walks slow enough, we'll crown her queen." She grabbed a glass of rosé from a tray. Elena barely had time to blink. The liquid flew, splashed across her chest, down her dress, pink droplets soaking into the linen like blood into bandage. The crowd gasped, not in horror but hunger. They were getting what they wanted. Her pain, her humiliation, her collapse. Elena wiped one drop from her cheek. Her eyes lifted, calm, steady. She didn't scream, didn't flee. She didn't even blink. But Harper did. Harper stepped back, sick with the heat of secondhand cruelty. She watched it all. The cameras, the clicks, the venom in their smiles, and she felt something in her twist and fracture. And for a moment, she saw Elena. Not the linen, not the smudged hem, not the pink stain. She saw the woman who stood taller than every model on the guest list. "You should leave now," Brielle spat, "while you still have any shred of dignity." Cleo's stream hit 100,000. Comments piled in. "Beige girl, humiliated again. She just doesn't learn. Maybe try a courthouse wedding, hun." Elena took a breath and whispered to Hugo again. "Ask for Damien." Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be, because the moment his name left her lips for the second time, everything shifted. A hush fell across the courtyard like a curtain being drawn. A tall man appeared at the far end of the terrace. Dark suit, broad shoulders, black tie, hair like midnight, eyes that burned like obsidian fire. Damien Cross. The entire crowd turned, faces twisted from arrogance to confusion. He walked past the fountain, past the whispering editors, past Arya, who had gone pale, past the interns, now suddenly aware they might have gone too far. He stopped when he reached Elena. His hand took hers. His gaze didn't move from her eyes. And then he turned toward the sea of stunned silence. "This is Elena James," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried like thunder. "My fiancée, and in about 5 minutes, my wife." A collective breath sucked in. Somewhere someone's phone slipped from their hand and shattered on the marble. Harper gasped. Cleo froze, her stream still running, now at 200,000 viewers, watching in real time as the entire world turned upside down. Arya's mouth opened, but no words came out. Jenna looked like she'd been struck. Brielle crumbled. Her confidence cracked in one heartbeat, and Damien's voice, measured, cold, irrefutable, continued. "You judged her by her clothes, by her silence, by her refusal to play your game, but what none of you knew." He paused, glancing down at the woman beside him, his eyes softening for a brief, private moment. "Is that Elena is also the founder and CEO of Lumina?" Gasps, cries, phones scrambled into hands. A fashion editor dropped her champagne. The name echoed across the courtyard like a tidal wave. Lumina. The brand that had redefined modern couture. The minimalist, architectural, sustainable label worn by half the red carpets in Hollywood and half the royals in Europe. Elena was Lumina. And she wasn't crashing the wedding. She was the wedding. And she'd been standing in front of them the whole time, mocked, insulted, doused in wine, and not once had she let them see her flinch. Because queens don't flinch. They rise. The words hung in the air like a bomb that refused to detonate. She's the founder of Lumina, Damien said again. Softer this time, but no less lethal. The very brand most of you are wearing tonight. It was only then that Arya looked down at her own gown. Lavender silk, clean lines, a signature inverted dart at the waist. A Lumina design. The realization hit like cold water. She wasn't mocking a nobody. She had just spent the last hour taunting the woman who signed her PR deals. Cleo's phone trembled in her hand. Still live. Her stream crossed 300,000. The chat was on fire. She's Lumina? This is better than any Netflix show. They bullied the CEO dead. Rewind to the wine throw. But no one was laughing now. Not in the courtyard. Luca's smile was gone. Sonia Mehta looked as though she'd been slapped across the face with her own bank account. And Brielle? Brielle stumbled back one step, her face pale. Damien stepped forward, his presence expanding like a rising tide. He pulled a small earpiece from his jacket, clicked it once, and nodded toward the chateau entrance. From the terrace, a woman in a gray suit approached, sleek tablet in hand, heels clicking like the countdown to war. Elena Ruiz, Damien said. Chief of Staff for Lumina. Elena Ruiz tapped the screen once, her face expressionless. You may proceed, she said quietly. The guests shifted, looking at one another, unsure what that meant. Then came Damien's voice, measured, composed, but slicing through the air like a scalpel. Brielle Kingston, Jenna Tran, Cleo Bell, for orchestrating and live-streaming Elena's humiliation at Atelier Valentina. The blood drained from Brielle's face. You're done. He turned next. Arya Bloom, Luca Voss, for amplifying the slander and harassment with public influence. Arya let out a gasp, her lavender gown suddenly suffocating. Effective immediately, all collaboration contracts are terminated. Your names are blacklisted from Lumina and all its subsidiaries. No, wait, please, Arya stammered. This is a mistake. I didn't know who she was. That's the point, Damien said, his voice steely. You didn't care who she was. You only cared that she didn't look like you thought power should. From the sides of the courtyard, 4 guards in tailored suits stepped forward. Escort them out. Screams. Please. Protests. Wait, this isn't fair, Cleo shouted. I didn't mean it like that. You streamed it, Damien said. And you laughed. Cleo tried to turn off her phone, but it was too late. A guard gently took it from her hands. Her stream, now at 500,000 viewers, captured her shock, her humiliation, her collapse. Jenna broke into tears. Arya tried to hide behind a stone column. Luca stammered something about misunderstanding. No one listened. Brielle didn't move. Frozen. Shattered. The guards moved fast but silent. No spectacle, no violence. Only velvet justice. Sonia Mehta stepped forward, desperation clawing at her throat. You can't do this to me. I'm an investor in your own tech empire, Elena interrupted, her voice the calm after a storm, which just lost $17 million in projected revenue thanks to your behavior tonight. Sonia's mouth opened, then closed. You threw wine on me in front of 800,000 people, Elena said, her tone still gentle but no longer forgiving. You weaponized shame for sport. And now, the consequences have arrived. Sonia tried to laugh. Forced, unhinged, but no one joined her. The paparazzi had gathered beyond the outer gates. They weren't aiming at Damien, or the chateau, or the designer guests. They were locked on the parade of disgrace leaving the wedding. The ones who thought cruelty would never cost them. Sonia tripped on her hem. A rosebush tore her dress as if fate had opinions of its own. Her earrings fell. Her pride shattered. Behind her, a single voice rang out, not loud, but heavy. She mocked the wrong woman. A journalist whispered it, another one nodded, then someone tweeted it. It trended within minutes. Back inside, the courtyard shifted. Where there was once mockery, there was now awe. Elena stood still, same dress, same stained hem, same unflinching grace. The linen clung to her with dignity no gown could match, and the silence she held was louder than any scream. Then finally, she stepped forward. Not rushed, not angry. She simply moved with the ease of someone who had climbed through fire and decided not to burn. She stood where the fountain met the marble archway. Guests now parted like waves before her. "I'm not here for revenge," she said, her voice quiet but commanding. "This is not about vengeance. It's about visibility and dignity and respect." The words lingered like perfume in the air. "I built Lumina to make beauty accessible, but I've seen what the fashion world does to women who don't come dressed in armor, who show up wearing honesty instead of labels, and it ends now." The crowd leaned forward, breathless. She turned slightly, just enough to catch Harper's eyes in the crowd. "You don't need to know someone's name to be kind," she said softly. "But if you choose cruelty, don't be surprised when kindness rises without you." Harper's eyes filled. A single tear streaked down her cheek. Damien stepped to her side again, his hand slipping into hers. "And one more thing," he added, voice smooth as obsidian. "As of yesterday, Elena became the controlling owner of Atelier Valentina, which means—" He turned toward the guests, his eyes piercing. "Your gatekeeping days are over." A long pause. Then Harper clapped. Once, twice, a third time. Soon the sound swelled, overtaking the stunned silence. The applause rippled outward, hesitant at first, then stronger. Not everyone joined in. But enough did. Because they understood now, they weren't just watching a wedding, they were witnessing a coronation. The grand hall of Château del Stel waited like a cathedral carved from moonlight. Candles flickered from golden candelabras, lining the aisle in clusters of soft flame. Orchids bloomed in crystal vases beside every seat. Above, the vaulted ceiling shimmered with hand-painted constellations, stars long dead, immortalized in gold. The guests slowly moved indoors, many still in shock, others trembling with something far more rare in a room of the elite: humility. And then, the lights dimmed. A hush fell over the hall. Not the forced silence of anticipation, but the reverent quiet that comes before revelation. A quartet in the balcony began to play. Strings, low, trembling, rising gently like something blooming underwater. At the altar stood Damien Cross. His dark suit tailored to perfection, his black tie crisp, his hands folded calmly before him. But it was his eyes that commanded the room. They were locked on the doors, waiting, and then they opened. Gasps broke out across the hall. Elena James stepped into the light, but this time there was no linen, no tote bag, no dust at her feet. She wore the gown they told her she could never touch. Ivory silk flowed like water down her form, each panel hand-sewn, each seam invisible. The bodice shimmered with diamond embroidery, each gem hand-picked from her own designs. The neckline was sculpted, regal and bold, balanced by the softness of a trailing train that whispered across the marble like breath. Her hair was swept into a low chignon, a single diamond clip, just one, glinting like a silent crown. And yet, she wore no necklace, no earrings, no veil. She didn't need them. Her presence was the adornment. The silence in the room was total. Harper pressed her hands over her mouth, tears slipping between her fingers. A designer in the front row lowered her sunglasses in awe. One of the Vogue editors dropped her pen. The only sound that followed Elena was the soft rustle of silk, the echo of heels, slow, deliberate, sovereign. Damien never looked away. Each step Elena took erased every word they'd said about her. Every insult, every meme, every cruel whisper. The same hall that once laughed in streams and hashtags now bowed beneath the weight of her grace. And as she reached the altar, she paused, not to fix her train, not to catch her breath, but to look slowly at the crowd. Every face, every eye, every trembling, guilty soul. And then she turned to Damien and smiled. Not a sweet smile, not a victorious one, but a smile of truth. The kind that says, "I walked through fire and came dressed in light." Father Julian, a silver-haired French priest with robes that shimmered like dusk, stepped forward. "Dearly beloved," he began, his voice a soft tremor against the string music, "that we are gathered here today not just for a wedding, but for a union that defied what others tried to break." Elena and Damien turned toward each other, hands clasped. Damien's voice was low but steady. "I vow to be your shield, your sword, your silence, and your song. To never speak over your truth. To never let the world reduce you." Elena's voice followed, calm as breath. "I vow to build with you, not empires, not legacies, but moments. Moments of peace, of joy, of change, of kindness." Harper wept openly now, tears falling freely onto her dress. Even Cleo, watching from outside the gates via confiscated phone footage, sat numb in the back of a town car, watching the woman she mocked become everything she pretended to be. When the vows ended, Father Julian smiled, lifting his hands. By the power vested in me and with the stars above as witness, I pronounce you husband and wife. Damien didn't wait. He kissed her, soft, slow, but full of the kind of gravity that makes galaxies turn. The room erupted. Not in the roaring claps of the elite trying to be seen, but in something quieter, deeper. Respect. Because they knew what they had just witnessed. Not a spectacle, not a headline, but a reckoning, a restoration, a revelation. Outside, lanterns bloomed across the garden like low-hanging stars. The reception unfolded in delicate harmony, music drifting over lavender hedges, champagne flowing like gentle waterfalls, laughter reborn not from mockery, but from humility. Elena danced with Damien beneath an arbor of roses, her gown glowing like moonlight caught in motion. His hand never left the small of her back. Their eyes never left each other. Across the garden, Elena Ruiz approached. "It's done," she said, holding up the tablet. "The Valentina acquisition is finalized. The firings are official. The press embargo is lifted." "And the world?" Elena asked softly. "They're calling you a revolutionary," she smiled. "Good," Elena said. "Let's keep it that way." Later, when the guests had found their rhythm again, Elena slipped away from the crowd and made her way toward the fountain, where Harper stood alone, her black lace gown trembling in the night breeze. Elena said nothing at first. She stood beside her, their reflections flickering in the rippling water. Harper turned, shame painted across her features. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't know who you were." Elena looked at her. "You don't have to know someone's name to be kind," she said, repeating the words from before. "But you remembered something they didn't. You paused. You looked." Harper blinked back more tears. Elena reached into the folds of her gown and pulled out a small envelope. "Lumina Bridal is launching next spring," she said. "We need a face, someone who can tell the truth through silence. Someone real." Harper's eyes widened. "Me? You saw me when no one else did." She handed her the envelope. Inside was a contract, headlined simply, "Harper Lang, Lumina Bridal Campaign, Brand Muse and Voice." Harper clutched it to her chest like a lifeline. Elena touched her arm once, gently, then turned back toward the man waiting beneath the arbor. At the edge of the estate, where the hills rolled into velvet sky, Damien waited with 2 glasses of champagne. She reached him in silence. "You changed the game tonight," he murmured, brushing a stray curl from her cheek. She smiled, her hazel eyes catching the stars. "No," she whispered, "we did." And as the music rose behind them and the wind swayed with approval, they stood, no longer just bride and groom, but sovereigns of something greater. They hadn't just rewritten a wedding. They had rewritten the rules. In a penthouse suite overlooking Sunset Boulevard, Camille Kingston sat motionless on a velvet settee, still in her sapphire gown, now wrinkled and stained with fear. The television glowed silently in front of her, volume off, but the images were unmistakable. Clips from the wedding, her wedding as she'd arrogantly called it just days before, flashed on every channel. Headlines blazed across the screen like lashes from a whip. Beige girl revealed as billionaire CEO of Lumina. Bride banned from bridal boutique now owns it. Atelier Valentina manager fired on spot, caught in viral disgrace. Every outlet, every language, every continent, CNN, BBC, Vogue, People, Forbes, they all told the same story. And the world was watching Camille fall. Her phone buzzed violently on the glass coffee table. Again, and again, and again. Each ping a new death knell. Brand deals severed, press requests denied, clients disappearing, unfollowed, uninvited, unemployed. Her Instagram, once glowing with blue-check adoration, bled followers like a sinking ship. And the comments? "You're the reason kindness feels rare. Hope your boutique has a clearance rack for your dignity. She trusted you with her silence and you live-streamed her pain." A final ping. It was an email from the board of Atelier Valentina. Subject line, "Termination of all executive authority, effective immediately." She read it twice, unable to breathe. She had been erased from her own empire. Across the city, in a luxury apartment filled with empty perfume boxes and dust-covered ring lights, Cleo Bell sat cross-legged on the floor in silence. Her phone was gone, confiscated. Her live stream, once a golden ticket to internet stardom, now played in segments on talk shows across the globe. Some hosts laughed, some gasped, but all condemned. Even her sponsors, who once begged for collabs, posted disclaimers distancing themselves. A shampoo brand issued a public apology just for having liked one of Cleo's older posts. A knock came at the door. Cleo didn't answer. It didn't matter. Nothing did. She had posted a video titled, "Fashion Troll Reacts to Nobody Bride." Now that same bride owned the platform she used to mock people on. And Cleo? She had become the warning. In a seaside villa in Capri, Aria Bloom screamed into her throw pillows as her lavender gown lay crumpled across the floor. The brand deal with Dior? Cancelled. The YouTube docuseries she'd been filming about empowered fashion queens suspended indefinitely. Her PR agent stopped answering. A video clip now played in a loop, her spinning in circles at the wedding, mocking Elena in her linen dress. That dress now sold out globally. A new trend surged. Beige power. Everyday women began posting in beige. No makeup, no filter, no designer bags. Just strength, just softness, just solidarity. Elena hadn't just owned her moment, she'd started a movement. Meanwhile, inside Lumina's towering HQ in downtown LA, the atmosphere was electric. Media teams scrambled to accommodate the new interviews. Designers whispered about the wedding's fashion implications. Investors, some of whom had doubted Elena's leadership, now stared at her office like it was a temple. Inside, Elena stood at the window, her gown replaced by a crisp white jumpsuit, barefoot, holding a cup of green tea. She didn't need to celebrate. The world was doing it for her. Lumina's value had doubled in 48 hours. And Atelier Valentina, now folded into the Lumina family, was undergoing a rebirth. No more exclusivity, no more cruelty. Real elegance isn't in price tags, read Lumina's newest billboard. It's in how you treat people. The face of the campaign? Harper Lang, shot in a simple beige silk wrap dress, standing barefoot by the sea, her eyes full of hope. Elena's chief of staff entered with a tablet. "The press is requesting your response to the global reaction." Elena turned slowly, eyes soft. "What are they asking? Why you didn't reveal your identity earlier? Why you walked into Atelier Valentina without a stylist, without security, without warning?" Elena smiled, serene. "Because that's how every woman walks into places like that. Alone, exposed, hoping to be seen." She set her tea down, walked toward the glass conference room, and opened the door. "Let's talk," she said. Online, the world roared. Clips of Elena's silent walk down the aisle set to orchestral remixes. TikToks celebrating her rise. Interviews with designers now proudly admitting they'd once worn Lumina with no idea who its founder was. And the best-selling dress that week? A simple beige linen shift. No labels. No sparkle. Just strength. Outside the gates of Chateau del Stel, the paparazzi clung to fences like vines on iron. But Elena and Damien were long gone. They had slipped away after the final dance, his hand in hers, the stars reflected in the fountain behind them. No farewell, no victory speech. Because this wasn't a finale, it was only the beginning. The jet touched down in the early morning haze, wheels whispering against the tarmac like a sigh of release. Elena James stepped onto the private runway at JFK with no fanfare, no paparazzi, no flashbulbs. The diamond-studded silence of Tuscany was behind her now. She had exchanged palaces and silk-draped halls for the comforting weight of New York humidity, the kind that clung to your skin and reminded you were alive. She wore sneakers, jeans, a white linen shirt rolled up at the sleeves. Beside her, Damien walked with one hand lightly on her back, his tie loose, eyes scanning the city skyline like a man returning to sacred ground. They didn't need to speak. Brooklyn welcomed them home with the smell of baked bagels, bus brakes, and rain-soaked pavement. It was not glamorous. It was real. They liked it that way. Back in her old design studio, a repurposed brownstone nestled between a Haitian bakery and a laundromat, Elena turned on the lights. They flickered. The desk where Lumina was born still sat in the corner, paint-chipped and scuffed. Her original sewing machine, affectionately named Nina, rested beside a tower of sketchbooks worn at the corners. Swatches of fabric lined the shelves, cotton, silk, denim, burlap, all labeled in her own looping handwriting. She ran her fingers along the edge of the desk like one might brush a lover's arm. "I'm not done here," she said. Damien leaned against the doorframe, watching her with quiet reverence. "Good, because the world's just catching up." In the days that followed, headlines exploded. "The Lumina effect, fashion's reckoning begins." Elena James returns to her roots, Brooklyn studio to stay open to the public. From humiliated bride to billionaire builder, the power of soft strength. But Elena didn't take interviews. She didn't do tell-alls or sit-downs on morning TV. Instead, she opened her doors. Literally. A week later, the glass doors of the Brooklyn studio bore a handwritten sign taped to the inside. All women welcome, no appointments, no judgments. Lines wrapped around the block within hours. They came in droves, brides-to-be from Harlem, stylists from Queens, single mothers, fashion students, immigrant daughters, trans women, survivors. Some came with tears in their eyes. Some came just to stand in the space where the revolution had begun. And Elena met each of them with a smile, a soft nod, a listening ear. No one was turned away. She sat cross-legged on the floor with a Nigerian bride who couldn't afford silk and helped her find cotton that moved like wind. She listened to a teenager who said her mother told her she'd never look beautiful in white. She laughed with a woman in her 70s who swore she was getting married in red just to make her grandkids scream. Every hour, every voice mattered. Every body, every shape, every skin tone. Because Elena wasn't interested in selling dresses. She was interested in restoring dignity. Harper Lang arrived quietly one afternoon, sunglasses perched nervously on her nose, contract folder clutched to her chest. She had hesitated for days before coming. But as soon as she stepped into the studio, Elena looked up from a bolt of champagne silk and smiled. "You came," she said gently. Harper removed the sunglasses. Her eyes were rimmed with uncertainty. "I thought you might change your mind." "I never offered you a role based on guilt," Elena replied, walking over to her. "I offered it because you paused. You looked back. In a world that keeps moving when someone falls, that matters." Harper's voice cracked. "They're still mocking me online for not speaking up." "Then let them," Elena said softly. "Let them see you rise." She placed a tape measure around Harper's shoulders. "Now let's find out what grace looks like in black silk." Meanwhile, in boardrooms across Manhattan, fashion house executives scrambled. Lumina's merger with Atelier Valentina had not just upended the high fashion economy, it had redefined it. The rules had changed. No more price-on-request silence. No more appointments that felt like interrogations. No more gatekeeping behind chandeliers and golden velvet ropes. Lumina Bridal launched under the tagline, "Elegance without permission." It was raw, inclusive, affordable, dignified, and it sold out in hours. Influencers who had once mocked Elena begged for second chances. Some issued apologies, others disappeared. But Elena didn't respond. She was too busy, too focused on her next campaign. Project Still Seen, a mentorship and employment pipeline for women shut out of the fashion world because of race, poverty, disability, or past incarceration. One of the first hires? Tessa, the intern who had thrown the macaron. She showed up one morning in a thrift store blazer, tears in her eyes, resume in hand. "I was awful," she said. "I don't deserve to be here." Elena looked at her long and hard. Then she offered her a cup of tea and a seat at the pattern table. "Then this is exactly where you should be," she replied. And still the world watched. A viral tweet. Elena James changed the industry without screaming. She just walked in, sat down, and refused to be moved. A meme. A photo of her linen dress from the wedding, captioned, "You can't measure worth in sequins." A billboard in Times Square, Elena standing barefoot in her Brooklyn studio, surrounded by women laughing, crying, fitting gowns. The slogan, "Not every queen wears a crown, some wear beige." Back home, late at night, Elena curled on the couch beside Damien, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing soft circles on her shoulder. "Did we start something too big?" she asked once, eyes half closed. He smiled into her hair. "Too big for who?" She smiled. For a moment, there was only quiet. Then she said, "I want to open a studio in Chicago. Then Atlanta, then maybe Lagos." He chuckled. "Global revolution, coming through linen and grace." "Exactly," she whispered. And as the city pulsed outside their windows and her dreams began drafting themselves into midnight sketches, Elena knew this wasn't just about fashion. It was about a future where no woman ever has to earn her worth. Because worth, she had learned, wasn't given by boutiques or brands or bridal consultants in black dresses. It was already hers. Rain tapped gently against the tall windows of what once was the crown jewel of Los Angeles bridal couture, Atelier Valentina. Inside, the scent of old roses and fading arrogance still lingered like cheap perfume. The marble floors still gleamed, but there was dust collecting beneath the chandeliers. The racks that once held gowns priced higher than most people's mortgages now stood half empty. The gold-accented welcome desk, where so many women had been quietly broken, sat unstaffed. And standing in the center of it all, drenched, trembling, eyes hollow, was Camille Kingston. No longer in sapphire velvet. No more designer heels. She wore a trench coat too big for her frame, sleeves soaked from the storm outside. Her makeup had long since run. Her fingers clutched a manila folder filled with what she insisted were documents of relevance. She had been waiting for 3 hours. When the doors finally opened, the click of heels was soft but sure. Elena James stepped into the space like it had always belonged to her. She wore no jewelry, just high-waisted charcoal slacks and a black silk blouse. Simple, stunning, sovereign. 2 Lumina team members flanked her, but said nothing. They didn't need to. The silence that followed her was enough. Camille straightened. "I need to speak with you," she said. Her voice was hoarse, thinned by days without sleep, nights chasing lawyers who wouldn't return her calls, and brands that now treated her name like a virus. Elena paused. She looked around the boutique, at the memories embedded in the very walls, at the velvet curtain where they had tried to force her out, at the mirror where she had once been called an insult to couture. And then her eyes returned to Camille. "You have 2 minutes," she said. Camille's lips trembled. She stepped forward, holding out the folder like it contained salvation. "I made mistakes," she said quickly. "I panicked. I didn't recognize you. You thought I was beneath you," Elena said calmly. "You thought I didn't deserve to be here because I didn't look like the clients you were trained to adore." "I didn't know. That's the excuse, isn't it?" Elena cut in. Her tone wasn't angry. It was sharp, clear, like a scalpel used in surgery. "That's what everyone said. I didn't know who you were, as if a woman must be powerful in order to be respected." Camille's breathing faltered. "I built this place," she said. "I gave it everything. Years of my life." "You built it on exclusion," Elena replied. "On humiliation. On the idea that grace could only come in Swarovski and silk." Camille's hand clenched the folder. "I can help you," she said. "Rebrand, relaunch, make this place what it was meant to be." Elena stepped forward. "Camille," she said, softly now, "what this place was meant to be was a space for every woman. Not just the polished, not just the privileged, every skin tone, every body type, every class." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded slip of paper. It bore the official Lumina seal. "I'm not here to rebuild your brand," Elena continued. "I'm here to erase what it became and replace it with something human." Camille took the paper and opened it. Her hands began to shake. It was a termination addendum, dated 2 weeks ago, with every clause bullet pointed. It wasn't just a firing. It was a permanent revocation. No access. No collaboration, no use of the Valentina brand, no future partnerships in any Lumina vertical. "I have nothing left," Camille whispered. Elena stared at her, unmoving. "You had everything," she said. "Power, position, influence, and you used it to mock a stranger in beige because it made you feel safe." Camille collapsed onto the nearby bench. For the first time in her adult life, she looked small. "I don't know how to be anything else," she said through broken breath. That was the truth, wasn't it? So many in the industry had confused cruelty with competence, gatekeeping with leadership, arrogance with artistry. And now that curtain had been pulled back, and the emperor wore shame. Elena studied her for a long moment. Then, quietly, she said, "This location will reopen in 6 months as House of Grace, a Lumina collaborative space where emerging designers from underserved communities will showcase their work." Camille's head lifted. "It will feature a mentorship program for inner-city fashion students, a free atelier apprenticeship for survivors of domestic abuse, a bridal line that includes every size." She took a breath. "And it will be run by people who remember what it's like to be overlooked." Camille looked down at her lap. "And me?" "You're not part of the story anymore," Elena said. There was no venom in it, only truth. And that was the final blow. Camille nodded. Tears slid silently down her cheeks. But Elena didn't linger. She turned and walked away, each step erasing years of cruelty etched into the marble. 6 months later, the boutique reopened. Gone were the golden plaques. Gone were the velvet ropes and icy reception desks. The windows now displayed mannequins wearing gowns designed by black girls from Harlem, trans seamstresses from Detroit, Latinas from Boyle Heights, Muslim creators from Queens. The new sign above the entrance read in flowing script, House of Grace, by Lumina inside. The scent of jasmine and warm candles filled the air. There was laughter, music, storytelling. And in the far back corner, beneath a wall lined with thank you letters and wedding photos, sat the same old mirror. But now, it reflected something real. Not judgment, not mockery, just hope. The glass dome of the United Nations Assembly Hall shimmered with midday light as world leaders, delegates, CEOs, and journalists took their seats. A sea of suits and silk, cameras and translation headsets. No one whispered. No one scrolled. They were waiting. The woman they had once called Beige Girl was about to speak. And this time, the whole world was listening. From New York to Nairobi, Paris to Port-au-Prince, the live stream ran on every major news network, translated into 67 languages, broadcast to over 100 countries. She hadn't come with slides. She hadn't come with a rehearsed PR video. Elena James stepped onto the blue-carpeted stage in a tailored cream pantsuit, simple diamond studs in her ears, her hair swept up, not for glamour, but for clarity. Behind her, the emblem of the UN gleamed gold. Her heels clicked once, then silence, and then she began. I wasn't supposed to be here. Her voice, soft but strong, carried across the marble and monitors. Not in this room, not at that altar, not at the head of a $12 billion fashion empire. I wasn't supposed to be seen. A beat passed, no rustle, no breath. I was supposed to stay in Brooklyn, behind a sewing machine, grateful, quiet, invisible. But I showed up, in beige linen, no jewelry, no last name you recognized, and for that, some people laughed. She looked up slowly. In fact, some of them are here today. Several delegates stiffened. Cameras panned discreetly. She let the tension hold for a breath, then continued. But here's what they didn't know. The world is changing. The woman you dismiss in a lobby today may own the building tomorrow. Murmurs of agreement moved through the room like wind across wheat. I'm not here just to talk about fashion, she said, her voice sharpening like polished steel. I'm here to talk about access, dignity, economics, opportunity. She raised a hand. Globally, fashion is a $2.5 trillion industry, and yet it remains one of the most exclusionary. Only 1.3% of executives in luxury fashion come from Black or brown communities. Less than 0.5% are women who've lived below the poverty line. Her fingers curled loosely at her side. Beauty is global, but power? Still concentrated. I'm here to ask, what would our industries look like if we judged less by who walks in and more by what they carry in silence? A few diplomats nodded. One UN ambassador whispered, she's not giving a speech, she's holding a mirror. Elena paused, let the silence stretch again. Then, I walked into a bridal boutique once, with money in my account and a custom order already placed. I was called a fraud. I was live-streamed and mocked. I was followed out as if I had no name. And now, her lips curved into something close to fire. I own that boutique. Laughter rose, this time not at her, but with her. Warm, respectful, stunned. And here's what I did with that power. I fired every person who made cruelty their currency, and I opened the doors to women no one else saw. She took a breath. I'm not asking for handouts. I'm asking for pathways. Not pity. Partnership. Applause built. Slowly, reverently, then louder. But she wasn't finished. I've launched a global initiative, the Grace Project. In partnership with Lumina, we're opening design incubators in 12 cities, from Lagos to New Delhi, Detroit to Phnom Penh. Every location will provide free design education, microloans, workspaces, and fashion pipelines to women who've been shut out of the industry for generations. The room burst into applause. Delegates rose. Her voice never raised, but it roared in their chests. Across the globe, the internet caught fire. Elena James just redefined power with a whisper. From mocked bride to UN speaker, the revolution wears beige. You don't have to shout to shake the world. Clips of her speech circulated with hashtags, Elena at UN, Grace not gatekeeping, we all belong. Students in Soweto held viewing parties. A sewing collective in Bangladesh cheered and wept. A designer in Venezuela sketched her face in thread onto the back of a denim jacket with the words, she walked in anyway. Later that evening, Elena stood on the rooftop of her Brooklyn studio, the Manhattan skyline glowing in the distance. Damien joined her quietly, handing her a warm tea. You shattered them, he said, watching her profile. But with elegance. She sipped, smiling. I don't want to shatter anyone, she whispered. Just the doors they keep closing. He kissed her temple. And if they build new ones, she turned to him, eyes like calm fire. Then we walk through the walls. It had been exactly 1 year since the wedding that changed everything. And yet, Elena James hadn't thrown a gala. She didn't host an anniversary spread in Vogue or commission a documentary about her rise. She didn't need to. Instead, she stood quietly in the Brooklyn studio where it all began, barefoot, sketching on the same scarred desk with the same pencil she'd used the night Lumina was born. Rain tapped gently on the window panes, the scent of sandalwood candles curling through the room. Behind her, muted laughter drifted from the open office, where Harper and a team of first-generation immigrant designers debated the placement of a new bridal sleeve. On the wall beside Elena, a new framed photo hung. Her wedding photo. But not the official one. This was the candid shot, taken by a guest when Elena first stepped through the chapel doors in that silk gown, her head high, her eyes ahead, her strength wrapped in ivory. It had become an icon, printed in textbooks, studied in media courses, turned into murals in cities from Johannesburg to Detroit. A new kind of power, one that didn't scream, one that didn't flex, one that stood its ground with grace. A soft knock. She looked up. Lucia, her longtime assistant and now Lumina's operations director, peeked in. "There's someone here to see you," she said with a curious smile. "She says she doesn't have an appointment." Elena's brow lifted. "What's her name?" Lucia hesitated. "She says it doesn't matter." Elena stood. "Send her in." The woman entered slowly, late 40s perhaps. Her coat was damp, her shoes were scuffed. She held a brown paper envelope to her chest like it contained her entire soul. Her voice trembled when she spoke. "I don't expect you to remember me," she began. Elena studied her, then she did. It hit her like a soft wave. The woman was Victoria Lang, the socialite who, that morning at Atelier Valentina, had walked up to her in a white mink coat and flicked the sleeve of her blouse as if it were disease. The woman who spat the words, "an insult to couture." But now, there was no makeup, no diamonds, just weary eyes, wrinkled skin. And something else, remorse. "I lost everything," Victoria said, not theatrically, not pitifully, just truthfully. "Not because of you, because of who I allowed myself to be. The wine club cut ties, the fashion houses revoked my perks, my husband filed for divorce." She looked down. "I thought, if I could just tell you I'm sorry, maybe it would quiet something inside me." Elena didn't speak. She let the silence settle like snow. Victoria's eyes glistened. "I didn't know how powerful you were." "That's the problem," Elena said gently. "You thought power was the reason someone deserved kindness." Victoria blinked. "I came to return something," she whispered, opening the envelope. Inside was a photo, a faded Polaroid, a little girl in dusty pink overalls standing barefoot in a corner fabric shop, hands outstretched, reaching toward a bolt of tulle. "My mother was a seamstress," Victoria said softly. "In Queens. I used to sit under her cutting table. She used to say fabric has a memory. Be careful what you put into it." She laughed once dryly. "I built an entire life pretending I wasn't that little girl. And in doing that, I became someone who would have shamed her." Elena reached out and took the photo, held it gently. She looked at the little girl, at the tulle, at the wonder. Then she looked up. "What do you do now?" she asked. Victoria hesitated. "I don't know yet." Elena set the photo on her desk. "Good. Then you're ready to begin." Victoria's breath caught. I don't deserve." "It's not about what you deserve," Elena said. "It's about what you do next." She gestured toward the studio door. "We're hosting free sewing classes for women re-entering the workforce, Monday through Thursday. Cess, you can start there." Victoria's voice cracked. "You'd let me learn again?" Elena's answer was simple. No one is born cruel, and no one is too far gone to start creating something beautiful. 3 months later, a new design debuted at Paris Fashion Week. It wasn't bold, or glittering, or dramatic. It was beige, a simple flowing dress, minimal lines, breathable silk, no corsets, no flash, but the inside label, hand-stitched, read, "Designed by Victoria L." Years passed. Lumina expanded to 26 countries. The House of Grace model was replicated globally. Bridal ateliers that prioritized story over status. Women from refugee camps in Lebanon were now showing alongside royalty in London. Grandmothers in Mexico City fitted gowns for queer teens estranged from their families. A little girl in Indonesia wore a beige Lumina dress to her village ceremony and whispered, "I feel like Elena." The industry didn't just evolve, it changed. It became human. One spring morning, in a small cafe in Paris, a university student opened her laptop and began writing a thesis titled "The Soft Revolution: How One Woman Rewrote Fashion Without Raising Her Voice." She began it with a quote, Elena's most famous words, words that outlived dresses, trends, brands, buildings. "Kindness costs nothing, but cruelty has a price." And somewhere in Brooklyn, beneath a sky streaked with pink, Elena James watched the world she once had to fight to enter, now opening for others. Not with trumpets, not with gates, but with hands outstretched and fabric that remembered grace. Because she didn't come to conquer fashion. She came to free it. Before you scroll away, ask yourself this. How many people have you overlooked simply because they didn't look the part? Elena James walked into a room full of judgment, wearing beige. They tried to humiliate her. They laughed. They streamed her shame. But what they didn't know was that she owned the future they were standing on. Let this be your reminder. Kindness costs nothing, but cruelty, it comes with interest. If this story moved you, share it. And to those who've ever been underestimated, drop a comment below. Tell us, what did they get wrong about you? Because your story isn't over, it's just getting started. Subscribe for more powerful stories that prove the quietest people often have the loudest impact.